It's the 21st of February 2025. Welcome to your Backcountry Snowpack Summary, brought to you by North Shore Rescue. It sure feels like things are getting back to normal. If you've been around this week, throughout the week, like since last weekend, we had about maybe 40 centimeters of new snow, but it was constantly alternating between rain and snow. So the top layer is really quite wet, quite saturated. And, it feels like your average North Shore skiing, which at the moment today is not all that great. If you watched last week, we were just on the verge of getting a storm, and there was a lot of disagreement between models. We were hesitating between 20 and 60 centimeters. Turned out, unfortunately, it was closer to 20. And the avalanche activity throughout the week actually remained fairly minimal. We were getting like small soft slab size 1. Today, especially this morning, wet, loose, very touchy, and training actually a fair bit of snow, but no real slab activity. So it was a fairly uneventful week. However, we have some significant weather that is coming. And if you backtrack a few weeks, we still have that late January crust that's at the bottom, and this Pineapple Express that's coming with a lot of rain is actually a pretty significant concern. So if you want to have a look at that late January crust and whether or not it gains strength and what it means for this weekend with the heavy rains that are coming and your weekend plan, stick around for the snowpack discussion. This week we're on a northeast aspect at 1,200 meters. If you've been following over the weeks, you probably remember that we've been talking about this January 30th crust. And at one point I said, well, I'm not really too worried about it. I'll start worrying about it again when we have a massive change in the pattern. And so here we are. So just to recap what happened, in the last few weeks or so, this was January 30th here. And we had a first storm. If you remember, this was actually on a Friday. We had an avalanche cycle. We did a video about that with some footage of avalanches that were very easily released. And then after that, immediately after that, on the 31st, we had another storm which left this snow. This snow is the one that got faceted and gave us such good skiing. As far as what happened this week, we had up here, this is the snow that fell this week. That left us with here 42 centimeters. This alternated between rain and snow, and you can see there are some saturated, very wet layer in this. If we look at precipitation amounts, so we have 42 centimeters of snow, but what actually fell is just over 120 millimeters of water. So very, very heavy, very wet snow. That layer of facet has switched to rounds, and it's now actually holding quite nicely. And as we're getting down into those crusts here, the January 31st and the January 30th, we're actually starting to see, like, underneath the crust, there are some concerns. And as you're getting down there, the snow is actually really nice and dry, which is fairly unusual for us. So that interface here, the January 30th, actually still produces test results. And right on top of the crust is a bunch of facets that are still there. They're still dry and they still produce test results. Would it be easy for a skier to trigger something all the way down there? Probably not. However, the weather that's coming this weekend certainly can. So it looks like we're getting Pineapple Express, so southwesterly flow for the North Shore. The forecasts are around the 80 to 90 millimeters of rain in the 24 hours between Saturday morning and Sunday morning. Freezing levels rising to 3,000 meters. So we don't really stand a chance. Like, I think that it's going to be a pretty miserable Saturday at least. But more importantly, avalanche forecasters and people who recreate and spend a lot of time looking at snow, we often, consciously or not, use pattern recognition. And now when we're skiing around on the North Shore, it very much feels like we're back to typical North Shore. Very wet snow. The skiing is actually pretty terrible right now, and nothing is really moving. Of course, in the top 40 centimeters, that saturated snow, you'll get some wet loose going. They're quite touchy at the moment, and they entrain a fair bit amount of snow, so you have to be careful about that. But it feels like sort of a normal North Shore day, and we'd expect this 40 centimeters to settle really rapidly and then to stop worrying about it too much. What we're not used to seeing in our pattern recognition is that layer of preserved facet that's, 120 centimeters down. While it's very unlikely for a skier to trigger that layer, I think that the weather that is coming certainly can. So what does that mean for your weekend plans? Well, if you have any sense at all, you're probably not going to want to go into the mountains in these conditions. Unusual weather tends to bring unusual avalanches, and I think that while what is coming is not unusual, what's behind us has been unusual, and it's easy to forget it a little bit too quickly. So if you do choose to go in the mountains on Saturday and Sunday, please stay out of avalanche terrain, and also keep in mind in factoring your risk calculation, factor the fact that it is going to be miserable. Helicopters will probably not be able to fly, and if you are in avalanche terrain, that's going to put the rescue teams in a very awkward position where we may or may not be able to get to you or be willing to expose ourselves to that much risk. And remember that, that all this extra weight is not necessarily all bad. Eventually, weight actually helps to compress the snowpack and will help this to heal. It's just when we're putting the weight on, when the precip is happening, when there is that sudden change in the snowpack, that's definitely a period to be extremely cautious. That's all I have for this week. Stay safe this weekend, stay dry, and we'll see you next week.